Let's talk for a bit about social engineering, which in a nutshell is the manipulation of our human instinct to help. And social engineering is perhaps the most pervasive threat around cybersecurity. Phishing attacks are an incredibly common way that people get breached, and that is a form of social engineering. And there are countless other ways to perform social engineering via social media, via the phone, in person, via email, via all sorts of other means. But the fortunate part is that there's some common characteristics that you can look for in social engineering to help you identify a potential threat and potentially stop it in its tracks. Let's go through these because most social engineering attacks or attempts will have these features in common. The first is that it will always be initiated from outside. So for example, if a social engineering attempt is someone trying to get you to install software on your Windows computer, you may get a call from Microsoft saying there's a problem with your Windows computer and they need you to download and install some software right away. You didn't discover a problem with your computer and call Microsoft yourself. Microsoft called you. So social engineering attacks are almost always initiated by the other party, the one that's attempting to attack you. So if whatever happens was initiated by someone other than you, that's the first thing you can look for. The next thing is authority. In the previous example I used, again, they're claiming to be Microsoft. You may get a call from the IRS saying that you owe a bunch of back taxes, and if you don't pay these back taxes, you'll owe a bunch more money, potentially even go to jail. So they'll use authority. We are Microsoft. We are the IRS. Or in the examples of spear phishing attacks, you may get an email message that seems to be from your executive director or your CEO or your direct supervisor, and that may be asking you to do something. So authority is another means that social engineers will use to try to get you to do the thing they want you to do. The next one is fear. In the Microsoft example, they'll say you have some malicious software in your computer, and if you don't get this cleaned up right away, your computer will become unusable or your funds will be stolen from you. In the IRS example, they'll say you'll go to jail if you don't pay this right away over the phone using your credit card. Fear is another very common tactic used in social engineering to try to, again, get you to do the thing that they want you to do without asking too many questions or delaying them. Urgency is another really classic one. In the IRS example, if you don't, we are the IRS using authority. We called you on the phone. That's the initiation. We're putting in fear by saying, if you don't do this, you may go to jail, you may owe a lot more money. And we'll put urgency on top of that by saying, in fact, if you don't pay us right now over the phone via credit card, then that's it. We're going to press, the fullest extent of the law, and you may go to jail, you may have a huge fine. So all these factors start to work together to really manipulate you into doing the thing the attacker wants you to do. This gets into a term you may not have heard before. You can think of the term pretense as a way to understand this, or pretexting, which is creating a situation that's imagined that adds some urgency or authority or other flavors to the situation. In this example, this is from a classic movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller, the character here played by Matthew Broderick, is claiming to be Abe Froman, the sausage king of Chicago. That's his pretext in order to get to eat at this very fancy restaurant when in fact he doesn't have a reservation at all, and he gets very threatening with the host at the restaurant in order to claim his authority that he is Abe Froman. Use urgency. If you don't let us sit at this table right now, I will call your manager and have you be fired, and so on and so forth. Pretexting is something you see very often in movies and television because it's very entertaining to watch the hero or the villain attempt to use these techniques to get past security or to accomplish some task. Let's look at how this might work in social media and in other contexts where you might not necessarily be familiar with it. Let's say I walked up to you on the street in my requisite hacker hoodie and you never met me before, and I started asking you questions like, what town were you born in? What was the name of your first pet? Where did you go to high school? What was your high school mascot? What's your mother's maiden name? And so on and so forth. You would presumably tell me to get lost and not give me any other information. However, if I again, complete stranger, approached you on Facebook and asked you like this, what's your My Little Pony name? Well, to figure out which My Little Pony are you? Are you Rarity, or are you Applejack, or are you Rainbow Dash? Let's go ahead and ask you these questions. I just need you to answer these questions for me. What town were you born in? And what was your first pet's name? And, what high school did you go to? And then we'll tell you which My Little Pony you are. Many of you are familiar, I'm sure, with these kinds of quizzes online, and they are, as you may have guessed by this point, often seeking to get security information from you. That's a quick take on social engineering. We're going to show you another video and have you look at that to see if you can figure out how much of these techniques are used.